Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this fourth day and last day of the series of public talks as part of the project Zoom In on Romanian Artists, a project supported by the Romanian Ministry of Culture, which is also launching the fourth edition of Art Encounters Biennial, which will be taking place this autumn. I welcome you today from the part of Art Encounters Foundation. My name is Diana Marincu, and here live with us are my colleagues Gia Țidorescu and Georgia Bacinski, and in the backstage, Natska Vasil, Cinoti Loerte, and Alina Bernecher. I would like to say a very warm welcome to curator Kasia Regiș and the artists Mihaela Hudrea, Flaviu Cacoveanu, Nona Inescu, and the artistic duo MONOTREMU. They will be presenting their works today. They will do short presentations, and after all the presentations, we will have a Q&A session. You could also hear and see Kasia speak about her curatorial project on Wednesday when she was presenting her plans for the exhibitions that she will curate for the biennial. I remind everybody that you can watch it again anytime on our Facebook page and very soon on our YouTube channel and Art Encounters website. Our website, but also the new website for this edition of the biennial, which will be launched tomorrow evening. We would like to encourage the public who is watching us to post their questions in the comment section of this live streaming, and we will deliver the questions to the artists and to the curator. The structure of this meeting today, so will unfold, as I already mentioned, with Kasia doing an introduction, then each artist will present their works, and then at the end we will have the discussion. I would like to say thank you again to the artists who are participating today to this talk and who will be participating in Kasia's exhibition. We appreciate you very much. We know your works and we are very happy that you are part of this project. Kasia, again, thank you so much for moderating these presentations and for being with us all along this program, Zoom In on Romanian Artists. I give you the word. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana, and good morning, everyone. And thank you to those of you who are our returning audience for getting back here and listening about the other part, the continuous part of my project for Art Encounters Biennial. As Diana mentioned, we will hear 4 presentations of artists who I think in a very different way addressing this broad notion of togetherness and being together in their practices. I must say that, as I mentioned earlier this week, this is still work in progress, and I'm actually very excited about those presentations because we never came together in larger groups, never met in more than 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 in some scenarios. So I'm really hope that those considerations that we're going to share with you today will bring us somewhere closer in the making of this exhibition. So I would say, without further ado, we will start, and we're starting with the presentation by Mihaela Hudrea, who is an artist who studied both in Casques School of Art in Ghent in Belgium, as well as School of Art and Design in Cluj-Napoca. And I mostly saw Mihaela's paintings, which very clearly, despite their very simple forms, connect us to those universal issues and question many of our existential concerns, including those environmental and scientific. Mihaela creates, she maps those ideas rooted in our ephemeral condition, but also her current focus is really understanding our surroundings in dialogue with the media and with the aesthetics of digital age. But I saw many of her works which are investigating objectiveness of science and also how we shape those conceptions about our environment, being close to it or distant to it. So Mihaela, please go ahead, start us off, and then we can continue.
Yes, thank you, Kasia, for the introduction, and also I'm very excited to be part of this program, and thank you everybody at Art Encounters. So I prepared, I will share the screen here. So I would like to start by presenting a work of mine that I did in 2019. It's titled "I'm Looking to the Sky Through the Surface of the Water." So this was a work that I presented at the Botanical Garden, and it was part of an exhibition, a project that was initiated by the Paintbrush Factory, which was in collaboration with different museums from Cluj. And the idea of this show was to present works that communicate with the exhibits from these specific museums. So I kind of took this quite literal, and I visited the Botanical Garden almost every day for a month. And I did this because I wanted to connect with the place, and also I did a lot of drawings on site on my tablet, and I will go through these pictures so you can see more. And I also prepared like a little selection of the drawings I did, so you can understand my process behind the final work. So basically these are shapes of plants and everything I saw around the Botanical Garden and also inside of the museum. And in the end, I just transferred these shapes on, I did cutting by hand on these materials. So these are part of the drawings that I did. Well, it's just a selection. So I also would like to add here that my work is intuitive, and to everything that I make, I show an interest for drawing, for shapes, and for color, and kind of this is my way to communicate and to connect with the surrounding world in a way. So my work is a response to my day-to-day interests, and the subject that I explored throughout the years is nature. And here I speak of nature, like the word nature in its widest sense. So be it close, like the environment that surrounds you, or be it from distant places, for example, that is beyond our planet, let's say. And here I can introduce my fascination for the universe, and in this case also for the fields that study it. So to go further, I also prepared another work titled Horizon, which I also made in 2019. Actually, I made a whole series under the same title. This is the first one, and it's also the picture from the Instagram and the Facebook of the Art Encounters. So this was shown in an exhibition in Budapest. It was a group show at an art space called Muto. And this exhibition was in collaboration with Lateral Art Space from Cluj. And what I want to say about this particular works is that, as you see, the canvases are folded. So through this idea, I kind of wanted in a way to shift this feeling of the canvas and give it almost like a paper-like quality to it. So it tricks this the eye, like visually it becomes something lighter, and that's also the reason why I chose to hang the drawings. And also I would like to add here something about the medium that I work with, which is drawing. And I do consider most of my works to be drawings because, I'm interested like to work with this medium and kind of try to stretch its borders somehow and explore with materials and find new ways and different ways to do drawings. And my approach to it, it's quite open. So for me, it can be as simple as an idea that starts in the mind and grows outside of the body. And in this case, the materials that I use are just like facilitators in this action. So basically, in conclusion, I think that drawing is movement, and vice versa somehow. So it remains drawing. It remains a thing of the present. So it's continuously a thing of the present. And when I develop my works, I think a lot about this process. At times, my works are labeled or seen as paintings, and that's okay. I mean, I don't have anything against painting. I actually love it, but this is just about my process and how I see things. So to me, painting is more like a medium that belongs to the past. Also through the techniques that are used in painting, and also through the action itself, that by placing layer of paint. So this action, in my opinion, produces an image or an object that belongs to the past. And in my work, I'm interested exactly in the opposite of the opposite result. So the next work, it's Deep Horizon from 2020. And actually this is part of an exhibition that it's still open at Matka Art Space here in Cluj. So if everybody wants to visit it and it's around, it can be done by appointment. So, this is this work, and all the works that I showed, that I exhibited in this show, are the starting point for them was a question like how could an image from a distant place could look like. So I played with this idea, and I was thinking about space travel and how we get all this information from distant places, like from space probes and rovers that go for other planets and so on. So I kind of thought how this coded images would look like, and I tried to come up with this image that could represent a possible landscape from the outer space. Yeah, here are more pictures, and also the next one, it's from the same show and it has the same idea behind the work. But why I also chose to show this work is because I wanted to mention something about this thing that I constantly do in a lot of my works. I kind of trick the eye, let's say, with different things, because like in the works from Budapest that I showed you, these ones that kind of trick the eye with the idea that this canvas feels almost like paper, and also through the intersection of the colors, it's like, I mean, the colors shouldn't be like that when they intersect. So I kind of play a lot with this trick in my works. And also here, these are basically prints on textile, and which are drawings that I made on my tablet. So this is drawing on my tablet is something that I usually do almost on a daily basis. And in this particular work, this trick, or I call it trick, but I can't find a better word for it. At first glance, you think of it as painting with a brush, but it's actually just a digital image. So here are more pictures, and yeah. So this was it for today, and if there are questions, I'm just waiting for.
Thank you, Mihaela. I am sure that there will be questions. Let's save them for the end of this conversation. I must say that I found it always very hard not to interrupt people with questions when they speak on Zoom. I also know that it doesn't work so well on the screen. But I think it's very beautiful what you presented about your interest in nature, and I would be later also interesting to explore this notion that you mentioned of the production of the object and focus on the object, and you're actually searching for an opposite result, an alternative result. So let's get back to it at the end of our presentations. The second artist who's going to present his practice this morning is Flaviu Cacoveanu, and he presents himself and introduces himself as a con and temporary artist, and I think it points you immediately in the direction of what his practice stands for. There is this con, which is something that is maybe not closely related to the objective truth, but also this very much refers to the conceptual side of Flaviu's practice. And here I think we'll be able to find certain traits about the objects and creating them or not creating them. But also, as I mentioned, this idea of questioning of the role of the artist and questioning of objectivity is very strongly present in the practice, while the temporary refers to his interest in the ephemeral and the fragile situation, but also processes. And I think to me this temporality is also important in the context of the show, because it's also something that I hope we'll be able to contradict, as in not to set the exhibition in certain contemporary moment, but rather keep it forward-looking and thinking about the future. So the whole idea of temporary versus lasting. will be quite important. Flaviu is someone who works with various mediums: photography, video, drawing, and painting, but also performative interventions. So it's again, it's very difficult to classify this practice, and I think what is really moving for me and important in the context of the biennial is his interest in our surroundings and questioning our relationship to this immediate environment, immediate neighborhood, the space we live in, but also social relations that are in this space. And I should also add that he's trying to develop approaches to understanding of the field of visual art, and I think playing with art market is also quite important there. But the notion of the everyday life and our roles in it are present in everything he does. So Flaviu, please take over the screen.
Thank you, Kasia, for introducing me, and as well giving some words about what I'm doing as an artist and also as a living human being. I would also like to thank everyone who's watching us now live on Facebook from wherever they are in the world. I think that's really interesting also in our times that we can connect really fast and we can be together so easily, at the same time, so disconnected to each other. Coming back to this idea of contemporary, I would like to add one more thing relating to that, because that's like the way I present myself in a really short way. It's like this kind of statement that I do or that I say about myself. And as Kasia said, it relates to a conceptual practice, but then also it has this kind of temporary layer, which relates to time and ephemerality. And I think also what's really important about me and what I'm doing is that I have a strong interest also in language. Like language is kind of a starting point for the works that I'm doing, and as well like for the way that I'm working and relating to the surrounding world. It always starts somehow from language. And that's what I was also doing when I was creating this kind of statement. I was just taking the word contemporary and splitting in two, and then through this kind of gesture, I could introduce a lot more meaning to it. I would also like to say that, I work in a way like in this kind of spectrum of mediums, and as well like in a spectrum of, like art, but I also see some works relating to communication. And I think in general, I'm working with a continuous project where I don't see so much distance from, my studio practice or my personal life. So for me, it's like kind of a constant development of things. And I think that's also really important because in relation to my works, I always come back on some things. I always redo them, rethink them, recontextualize them. And it's always like, it's super ongoing. And well, I would go on and I would just summarize, just bring a bit more understanding of my interest, to summarize some topics that also interest me on a recurring level. And as also Kasia mentioned, it's the way that how we relate or how we interact with our surrounding world. But then I'm also interested in conventions of the everyday life. And as well, there's a layer of existentialism, I would say, in many of my works, maybe not so clear to like, let's say, the immediate way of seeing them, but there is this kind of, at least on a personal level, interest for existentialism. Then there is my interest for kind of constant experimentation. And that's, just like working with different materials, but also like on the level of ideas, and also working with materiality and non-materiality. And also, again, as I was saying, one important aspect for me is language, but, it's not specifically texts or so much text or, this kind of stuff, but more going really deeper into words and even letters and how they work. And then also I have a strong interest, I would say, in borders. And through borders, I think they act on so many levels. And I'm also just looking for borders from a political way, from a geographical point of view. And then also I'm looking at borders from just personal level, but also even on a formal or conceptual level. Another idea which is important in relation to language, it's something I was also kind of developing in recent times, and I'm still understanding how to deal with this. I consider that I'm, let's say, painting or sculpting with language and within language. And why I do that, it's because I really feel it influences our perception, first of all, like how we perceive the world. It always goes through language. And I like to kind of, through playing with the language or through doing this kind of what I call painting or sculpting within language, I can influence this kind of perception of our surrounding world. And I also think like language is so important because it has this layer, or it kind of helps us also on communicating with each other, and creating all this interconnected world we live in. I would also like to say that my work is a lot about improvisation and as well intuitivity. So I don't really plan things in a very clear way. It just happens in my daily encounters, or through reading and so on. I'm just like intuitively, let's say, finding things, and then I look at them and I try to contextualize them and so on, and to play with them and so on. I call it a bit like a conceptual play, this kind of process that I'm doing. And of course, Kasia was also saying that there's this level of temporary, which is, I'm so much interested in ephemerality and like the time dimension of our lives, but also like looking into materials, like also like if there's materials that, for example, develop through time or through processes that happen in time, and also the way and the situations that surround us, they also relate to time. So it's always like a developing thing that happens in time. So nothing is in a way constant. So that's really, really important for me as well. So for this presentation, I just want to, because again, like my work is quite broad, and it's also something I'm still understanding myself, how to present and how to relate to. But just for this presentation, I will show a few works which, in a way, have all have the layer of site specificness. So I think that's really interesting in my case. And I will start with one recent work that I was actually just developing at the beginning of this year, and which is actually still ongoing. It's in a show ongoing in Reykjavik in Iceland. It's a show called Extraterritorial, a group show which was curated by Anna Victoria Bruno. And what happened, it was that me and another group of artists, together with this curator, we decided to make an exhibition in a supermarket, to do a set of interventions that are shown in a supermarket. And by this, we were, really working with the conditioning of our times, but also questioning things relating to, like the circulation of goods, and as well like being in different parts of the world and so on. So, like this work, or my work in this show, and which I'm showing here, it's called Sculpture, and it's a set of shirts, which all have like an inserted letter, a painted letter. So I took the word sculpture and I split it into individual letters, and then I was doing this intervention on the shirts, and then spreading this shirts around the supermarket. You can see them, maybe not always so in depth, but that was a bit my process to create this work. And I was also working with this restriction of working from home. So basically, I couldn't travel there, and I couldn't make my work in person. So I was just sitting on my couch and giving some instructions to someone who was in Iceland and who could make this work happen through my own instructions. So I think that's on another kind of side note, an interesting thing for me. And it's also something that I'm sometimes using in my practice, where I give instructions to other people, and then they can stage certain works for me. Yeah, I mean, also in relation to this exhibition, there were a few other works which I was showing. One is actually like an ephemeral edition. So I wanted to have a text printed on all of the receipts of this supermarket. So everyone who shops there and does the groceries, for example, they will have a work from me, and it's just a text written on all of the receipts, which has this following text saying "full moon, empty stomach," and as well, like, it works as an ephemeral edition because it has this condition of changing into time. Like, this kind of receipts, they always fade in time, so it's gonna not last forever. I think that was also really interesting in that case. And going further with my, with my experimentation, also in this strange times that we are living in. Last year, actually, I was invited to another group show, which was called The Town Mouse and the Country House. It was initiated by the artist-run initiative, The Balcony, from Den Haag in the Netherlands. And what they were doing, they were inviting artists that they were collaborating with to create a site-specific work. Like, one of them was spending this quarantine times in the countryside of Belgium, and then they were inviting artists to create a site-specific work for that specific context. And my reaction to that was to create a work that you see here. It's called The Wizard. And it's actually relating to a scarecrow, which was installed in a field in this kind of place in Belgium. So, for example, also with this work, I was interested in, working with a, let's say, new medium or new material, like introducing painting a bit more to my practice, also making painting in a kind of site-specific way, or almost taking it out of the gallery or whatever, and just putting it out in the field so that it can also sit there in the natural conditions. So I was doing this, figure, and that was also interesting for me because I was kind of relating to the canvas or to the colors also. I'm doing kind of an abstract painting, but then as well doing a figure, it was relating for me to this figurative part of it. So kind of mixing this also these two layers of figurative and abstract, that was also interesting to me. And yeah, just to continue this kind of developments, I will show you another work that also deals with kind of working with, let's say, painting, but as well with ambiguous materials, and has this site-specific layer, and also like this kind of temporary layer. It's called I Had a Dream, and it's a work I had shown in 2019 in a solo exhibition I made at Mudcart Space. The show was called Yin Yang Yo-Yo. And what happened here is that I was doing, let's say, a painting on the floor inspired by the action painting, let's say, approach to painting. And what I was doing, I was just using toothpaste to draw this kind of painting directly on the floor of this art space. And what was interesting to me, besides the visual aspect of this intervention, and also besides working with the space itself, like just doing it on the floor and so on, it was that it had a new dimension. It had a dimension of smell. So maybe there's some people who know this space from Cluj or had seen it, and it's actually like divided into two rooms, like one room where you enter, and then there's another room which goes up on the, you have to go on some steps, and it's like on the next floor. And then that's where I was actually doing this intervention with the toothpaste. And what was interesting is that you didn't see this when you entered the space, but you immediately would feel the smell, the strong smell coming from the toothpaste. So it was kind of creating this, communication throughout the whole space, and as well, like giving a new dimension to that space and to the work itself through smell. So that's, let's say, some of the works that I'm doing, but as well, it goes beyond this, and it's, like a long story in that sense. But besides my interests in art and what I'm doing in general in my studio and outside of my studio, I'm also looking a lot to things like memes, for example, and in that sense, I would like to just, as a kind of final way, show you one meme, which was interesting to me also in relation to my practice and also in relation to the field of arts. So, this was something that I found last year, and I thought it's really interesting, again, as I said, in relation to my practice and in relation to the field of arts. And, I would just leave it like this. For me, everything relates to an open process, but this would be like my ending to the presentation. Besides that, I just wanted to thank everyone, first of all, to my collaborators that helped me, and also like past, present, and future, and also to everyone involved with doing the Biennale, and to Kasia for inviting me for this. So that's all for now. And of course, if there's questions, I'm always here to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Flaviu. I think what you showed us as a fraction of your practice poses many interesting things in terms of our interventions in the world around us, but also somewhere at the beginning, showing your work in the Icelandic supermarket, which for whatever reason had a big shelf of Polish sausage in the forefront of the picture. You mentioned that you created this work giving a set of instructions, and this is actually something that I saw going through your portfolio before. In your textual pieces, you tend to give instructions or pose questions or produce statements. And I would also, and I know that you didn't show any of those works now in the presentation, but maybe we can get back to this later in the context of, do we give instructions during this forthcoming exhibitions? Do we have any solutions? Do we, or are these just open questions? Because you may have heard that on Tuesday or not, but I don't even know if to add a question mark at the end of the title of those two shows. So that's something to consider. Our third contributor is Nona Inescu, who is a recent, not so recent, 2016 graduate of the National University of Arts in Bucharest, where she studied photography and video at photography and video department. And Nona later went on to study at the Royal Academy of Fine Arts in Antwerp and at Chelsea College of Arts and Design in London. And in her work, again, a very versatile practice working with photography, objects, installations, and video. And what is the common thread in her, in all of those works, is that she explores the relationship between the human body and its environment, but very much through this lens of post-humanism and questioning really the bodies of the living and potentially or speculatively non-living matter, which is also something that interests me in the context of the show and this question of how to be together with nature. Nona exhibited internationally at Tallinn Art Hall, at HUA International in Berlin, Künstlerhaus Bremen, Savvy Contemporary in Berlin, and that was just last year, 2 years ago, which in 2021, I cannot believe it, but also at swimming pool projects in Sofia, Flaviu Cacoveanu, and She took part in Art Encounters Biennial, where Diana curated in 2017. So this is just to name a couple of your projects, Nona, and I'm sure you will show some of them to us right now. And I'm passing over the invisible mic.
Hi, and good morning. Thank you, Diana and Kasia, for the invitation to participate in this conversation, and as well as for inviting me to be part of the next edition of Art Encounters. As a reaction to Kasia's general framework of how to be together, addressing and redefining themes such as landscape, nature, and ecofeminism, while also learning from nature, I chose to focus my presentation for today on a specific body of work developed since 2017 and up until the present, which is probably the most rooted and connected geographically and geologically with the local landscape in Romania. I will show a selection of works based on concretion stones, as seen through several projects, exhibitions, and mediums, ranging from photography, objects, and installations, and finally morphing into video works. The word concretion is derived from Latin and from the Latin con, which means together, and crescere, which means to grow. So basically growing together. A concretion is a hard, compact mass of matter formed by the precipitation of mineral cement within the spaces between particles and is found in sedimentary rock or soil. It's a rock that can grow and develop in a round, cylindrical, nodular, spherical, ball, or asymmetrical or oval shape. Oscillating between miraculous and ominous, the so-called growing stones are commonly misunderstood geological structures. Often mistaken for fossil eggs, turtle shells, or bones, they are curious anomaly inhabiting various types of sedimentary rock. The first time I remember noticing a concretion was around 2015 in Cluj. On one of the main streets in the city center, some workers were extracting a huge round light brown stone from the ground. They simply found it while digging to fix the roads and redevelop the whole area. This entire process looked like a surgery to me, in which a bulky, heavy cyst is extracted from the deep insides of the soil now covered in tarmac. I remember calling my father, who was trained as a geologist, to inquire about this strange geological formation. He said these stones were born deep down in the earth over millions of years by a natural process of partial sedimentation. And this process occurs to a great extent in the subcarpathian hills of Romania. The Romanian word for them is trovanți. In spring 2017, together with my partner, we hitchhiked to an area around 140 kilometers west of Bucharest. The so-called Museum of Trovanți is a natural reserve that hosts several large-scale concretion stones found in the vicinity of the sand mines. You can get up close to them, touch them, lie down on them, like a sort of stone mattress. An entire playground for non-human tactile sensitivity. I even entered one stone for a crack. It wasn't a comfortable position to find myself in. However, it was a rare occasion to actually feel the dark, humid, and rough inside of a stone. The photographs from this series, called Concretion's Geophilia from 2017, document various encounters of a female body with stone formations. Through color reduction of the black and white photographs, forms and textures are emphasized, and the viewer's attention continually alternates between the human appearance and the stone structure. The body dressed in black momentarily becomes the shadow of the stone or disappears into the crevices. The classical presentation of the photographs can also be understood as an homage to historical feminist artistic positions such as Mara Alvarez or Ana Mendieta, who explored the relationship between body and landscape. Later on, the same year, I presented for the first time this photographic series in a personal exhibition at Exile Gallery in Berlin, entitled Lithosomes. Lithosomes is a composed word made from the Greek prefix litho, pertaining to stone, and the suffix soma, meaning of bodies. In short, stone bodies. Alongside the black and white photographs of this series, actual concretion stones were hanging in leather swings, forming a sort of playground or Pilates reformer. The idea behind integrating and showing the stone babies in such a way had less to do with fetish instruments and more with the idea of containing and controlling nature, while also responding to the physical characteristics of stone, the form and weight of it. What I had in mind was also an invitation for the viewer to interact with these geological structures, or at least create an impulse to do so. At this point, I also need to add that concretions not only form in sand soils rich with calcium carbonate, but also inside human bodies, in kidneys, gallbladders, or stomachs, salivary glands, and so on. The technical name for this particular concretion stone is calculi, whereas the process of formation is called lithiasis. Within the same exhibition, I collaborated with 3D artist Tesselat for the work Formation, which is a 3D animated attempt at envisioning the process of formation and growth of these particular stones, which can happen over tens of thousands of years and is practically invisible to the human eye. The process of sedimentation and aggregation happens when organic matter, such as an animal tooth or a dead leaf, becomes a nucleus and triggers the formation of these concretions. I will now show you a small excerpt from this video.
Primordial organic things loved their rocky forebears, clung to stone solidity, became part of stone themselves. It is harder than you suppose to tell the difference between protozoa and superorganisms, between the 5 arms of the starfish and the splayed human form. Organic life adheres, multiplies, fades. Yes, humans have always desired the endurance of stone. They scratch a small hole and bury their dead. They place rocks upon their bodies as if to keep the spinning world still. Yet life can hold perdurability only if the bacterial and the human are one. Then you are nearer to stone's speed. Then stone can see you. From this vantage, this view so anthropody-centered that language fails its imagining. From this lapidary perspective, stone possesses its own life, its own mortality. If stone had a voice, it would be less ponderous than your own. If your hurried heartbeat did not bind you to your swift smallness, you would know the affinity that binds you with the stone.
To continue, Introvert is the name of a series of works consisting in a custom metal cage, a stone concretion, and a leash, designed as devices to contain and block the growth of the stones. To quote Ion Dumitrescu, who wrote the text as an add-on of the exhibition Lithosomes, in pre-times, one can construct ambiences, accommodate the non-organic, the non-human, navigate between digital infancies and pseudo-metaphysics. One can treat the stones as one's inhuman friend. These are several other works from the same series. The following year, I continued to explore the same topic and elements by creating compositions in which concretions are rearranged as prosthetics or stand-ins for the human body. During a residency at Frac de Pays de la Loire and for the exhibition Manufacturing Nature, Naturalizing the Synthetic, curated by Diana Maringu, I made two new works, the video of vestigial structures and the sculpture appendix. Vestigial structures takes its point from the same concretions, considered to be a mystery of nature and a geological curiosity. But these stones, in the video, the stones appear to be attached to a human trans body, which not only accepts this proximity, but searches for a common ground. In addition to the body exercises using the stones as nodular patches attached to one's skin, images filmed in black and white at the Carnac alignments in Brittany are being juxtaposed. The Carnac stones cover more than 4 kilometers of nearly 3,000 of menhirs and dolmens dating back to the Neolithic period. Placed in rows, the Carnac stones were the subject of many disputed theories and traditional myths regarding their origin, from a hypothesis that they were erected by giants to a belief that they were pagan soldiers turned to stone by Pope Cornelius, to a more recent theory on their astronomical alignment as well as their architectural purpose. Menhirs, together with dolmens and cromlechs, constitute the ABC of sculpture architecture. Menhirs are single upright stones of considerable bulk, either dressed or in their raw state. Their habitat extends from the Atlantic coast of France all the way to Siberia and China, from Scandinavia to Africa. They may or may not commemorate an event, mark a grave, or be intended as phallic or anthropomorphic representations. One guess is as good as the other. In some instances, they were probably connected with fertility cults or served as altars for human and animal sacrifices. Identified with human beings, the menhirs were described by Jacquetta Hawkes in her book, by the British archaeologist and author Jacquetta Hawkes in her book A Land, first published in 1951, as follows. In all these legends, human beings have seen themselves melting back into rock. In their imaginations must have been pictured the body, limbs, and hair melting into smoke and solidifying into the blocks of sandstone, limestone, and granite. Quotes from this book are included in the video as a reference to the personal and visionary ideas of Hawkes on the individual as being dispersed in the whole history of humanity. Every being is united both inwardly and outwardly with the beginning of life in time and with the simplest forms of contemporary life. In connection to this particular research, an object titled Appendix, evoking vestige organs, remnants from our evolutionary past. Appendix is an assemblage of concretion stones suspended within a latex skin-like structure. The sculpture reciprocates the curved angles and shapes derived from the human body, representing the non-binary and occupying speculative categories that transgress narrow classifications of solidification of matter in time. These are some images from Frac de Pays de la Loire, from the exhibition that Diana Maringu curated. And I would now like to show you a part. I mean, it's a 7-minute long video, but I can stop it at some point from the video vestigial structures. I also wanted to add that the sound of this video was made in collaboration with Simina Oprescu.
expressed.
A more recent work from last year, Meander is a tribute to the birthplace of these stones. Around 50 kilometers from the Museum of Trovanți, there is a small river, quite hard to find. Google Maps doesn't show it at all. Its shallow waters are shadowed by all the trees and vegetations that grow on each side of the river. You can walk through the water, stepping on stones and over dead trees from time to time. This valley matrix's shape is the birthplace of many concretions, which have been developing inside the sand walls by the river and have been falling into the water for thousands or millions of years. The variety of shapes and sizes is endless. Meander traces the shape of the small and little-known river Gresarea in the Vâlcea County. Meander is a work commissioned for Tallinn Art Hall in 2020, and it creates a sculpture installation that combines landscape on the level of geological time with the human body. The permanence of landscape is only perceived as such by our relative experience of time, but the weathering of a rock and the carving of a river is evidence of planetary matter in constant flux. Rather than the body being present within the landscape, the structure of natural curves and flows of liquids is considered a body of a much larger scale. With water comes silt, rocks, plastics, and animal parts that partake in the river's voyage. These objects became one with the living matter of the moving river, continuously carving and creating a new landscape. The installation posits the earth itself as a body, and the human body in turn becomes a landscape. These are images from an exhibition dedicated to an Estonian painter, Olev Subi, and it was created by Angel Smiraldatena, and it revolves around the subject of landscape and also the gendering of this subject. In the 1980s, an amateur photographer and geologist, Ion Lascu, went to the same river and documented concretion stones photographically and published them in a book, Nature and its Sculptures. He anthropomorphizes them and suggests resemblances with objects and ideas mentioned in the captures in a rather cheesy way. Corporale was my first institutional solo show and took place in 2019 at Kunsthaus Bremen. The work selected for the exhibition, together with curator Nadia Quante, focused on the human interaction with natural and primitive materials, animate and inanimate. The work combines found objects from nature, such as stones or corals, with artificial or processed materials that imitate natural qualities, as for example, latex or leather. The objects are dissected, removed from their context to be carefully arranged in compositions of formal similarities and material juxtapositions in the exhibition space. Stones are enlivened, subject and object merge into each other and are no longer clearly distinguishable. Analogies between human, animal, vegetal, and mineral features are being drawn and propose possible interactions between human and non-human bodies through physical contact or touch. In this way, I examine the interrelations of shape or giving shape. Have humans shaped nature, or has nature shaped humans? The exhibition brings together existing works selected from various previous exhibitions, creating a new dialogue and connections between them. Thank you. That was all.
Thank you, Nona. I must say that I love how you added yet another meaning, very relevant for what we're talking about to Flavius Con. We have now 3 notions to work with, but also thank you for sharing the films, because I think this is where this notion of our being with nature and our status within nature really comes to life in this conversation. So I hope we can discuss it in more detail. And now I would like to move on to MONOTREMU, who is an artist collective, a duo, established in Timișoara in 2010 by Laura Borota and Gabriel Bodiș. They have a very beautiful social critical practice, focus, as they say, on the shortcomings of society, but also of our economy, our consumerism, and the environment we create for each other. I must say that completely unintentionally also your name, the name of the collective MONOTREMU, really is really well inscribed in this concept of in-betweenness and togetherness, because obviously monotremes are somewhere between the birds and the mammals as the biological category. So that's a lucky coincidence, but I found it really inspiring. What we're going to talk about today a bit more is the project MONOTREMU that you have been developing since 2012, and these are creative activities, really important camps related to contemporary art, but also the creation and the process of making, which I think is so essential and that we lose somewhere in our civilization at the moment. But you do it with kids and teenagers on a cyclical basis. So please do talk to us about it, and then we'll break for Q&As.
Hello.
Yes, good morning.
Thank you, Kasia, for inviting us. We will share the screen and make a short presentation. We'll try to present some works that are somehow related to our artistic practice. And also there is the link between our artistic practice and the educational part. And this is our latest work, and it somehow encapsulates the most of our preoccupations. It was part of the exhibition Școală-te we made with last year with Dan Perzhovsky. It's like a wordplay between to be schooled up and in the same time being aware of itself. So these are basically some. It's a collection of papers used in school in order to justify the unexcused absence. They come in standard apologies form, like I'm the parent of the kid, please excuse my child absence from school, or are from a doctor because of some medical conditions. But they also have like this. They also have like a very literary form. My son had to watch his little sister, otherwise he's a good kid, please excuse him, and so on. And most of them are templates. I already said that. And half of them we discovered are written basically by the same person, probably a colleague of the students. So those justificants were gathered in the last 3 or 4 years by Laura from the class where she's head teacher here in Târgu Mureș at the High School of Arts. And for us, it's like sort of testimony of how these kids are obtaining free time from school, basically. Each paper is like a ticket that get them out of the system and do whatever comes to their mind. We have to say also that we didn't encourage, Laura didn't encourage such behavior, but at the same time, he didn't punish it. So at the end, it was something similar to our beliefs that once we entered in contact with the educational system, we try to find all the cracks and breaches possible and to fill those gaps with information and really experience from the outside world. And that was basically topics that are largely discussed in the world of contemporary arts. And since the first day of teaching, anyone could be, because since the first day of teaching, anyone could be aware of the fact that the school is somehow outdated and it's out of its context. Because somehow it prepares the students mostly for the past. And if they do skip school, it's because they eventually can do something else, something that can relate to themselves. So it was not like an against school attitude. It was more like, okay, if you have this free time, do something that has meaning for yourself. Exactly. So to give you an example, these kids, these students where Laura is head teacher have to prepare these days like some sort of exam, some sort of certification. They have to obtain a certification that gives measure of their artistic skills, namely drawing, painting, and sculpting. So the problem is they cannot choose their own topics, so they have to discuss it previously with their teacher. But most of the cases, the teacher decide what subject will be. So this is somehow it's killing any form of dialogue, their creative capacity, and also the self autonomy. So last year, we were invited by Răzvan Anton and Mihai Epure-Gorski to choose some young artists in the frame of the exhibition Future Perfect. There are more information about the exhibition in the Paintbrush Factory
website.
So we realized that they have different things in mind. I mean, we already knew that there is a certain clash between their subjects and the school subject, but this exhibition was like the real testimony. We didn't choose them. We simply just launched the invitation, and it was no previous selection. So, and we would like to present you a few words. I mean, all of them, basically, because
but
they are
in short.
In short, yeah, very briefly. For instance, here in the left, it's a sound installation. The sound devices are hidden.
Gabi, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
I believe you switched to other slides, but on our screen we are still on the first slide with the notes.
Yeah, please stop the screen sharing and share the desktop in desktop mode. Yeah, we can see it now. The four.
Okay, like this?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, here you have a sound installation. So it's a series of recordings made by the students in which each one of them express one thing that they regret about high school. And at the end, it sounded like a choir of lamentation, but also like a choir of laughings, because at the end they also were celebrating all these 4 years of togetherness. Then we have bottom, we have a diary with drawings from the first lockdown. There are like 30 drawings. And it's a personal diary where when with the artist and her mother that ended when finally the entire family reunited. We have also here up a very fragile gesture of intervention in the public space in form of a fantastic bug that might flourish only while the old humanity will disappear. We have also reassembling a setup of a communist setup, and it also contains an audio installation that plays sound clips from the other side of the wall, mainly the Radio Free Europe. Then we have on the next page a testimony of how the artist was being taught to be a woman. Basically how to behave, what to tell, how to sit, how to look, and so on. So we have these ceramics shattered along with the portraits, and also a series of prints that were made after they were broken. Then we have another installation that explores nature through different mediums, paintings, photography, and objects. So there is also, here you can see a very intricate and complex sets of mirrors that guide a green light through the branch. Then we have only one print in the right, but it's also a serie that explore basically garbage and aesthetic of garbage along a very large research, almost 1 year. It's almost anthropological, and in the background it's another installation that it's made by drawings and paintings interpreted by Google Deep Dream and other different artificial intelligence programs. So it was like more like a collaboration between the artist and the machine. Then we have on the left, we have like a manifesto for slow fashion and handcrafting, opposed to fashion industry and consumerists that also make use of there is a small image here with Joseph Kossuth work, one chair, mainly his method of deconstructing the object from his definition and his representation. And in the right, we have this romantic posture. Basically, it's the aesthetics of football, because it's one of the main preoccupations of the artist and one of the reasons he's keeping school also. But from the perspective of being not like a goalkeeper or some sort of star, but more like it's more contemplative, because he's the last person of the field, as he calls himself. So point is, and what we are trying to say is that none of these subjects are being taught in school. So nobody talks with them about femininity or feminism, about new mass hysteria around machines, about re-exploring nature and so on. So they found all this subject, while they got exposed to all the knowledge that contemporary arts can offer, and directly from different contemporary artists that we work with, and including ourselves and different friends who were willing to participate to this experience. So we have here like a visit at the last Art Biennale, then we have here a visit at Fabrica de Pensule, and here it's from the Biennale, the Venice Biennale. So our focus was mostly to not not to work on the craft of being an artist, but more about how you can position in the relation with the world, which is somehow which is basically a collective view and a collaborative practice, because their world as teenagers is full of individualism and competition since early age, and it's all wrapped up in this personal development mantra. So we try to oppose to this a collective development, but because it's something that also defines our practice. It's the collaborative aspect where the authorship is somehow diluted, and we also always have to negotiate to each other and being relevant to each other, and also being relevant and with the context of any context, local, historical, political, and so on. So to give you an example of it's this work we made in Bucharest. It's called Nobody Keeps You Here. It's a reference to Maurizio Cattelan and Domenica Rivera when he escaped from the opening of his own exhibition. I guess we do relate with this. So we went our own escaping from Romania through this through ropes made out of Romanian flags. And the reasons are obvious. Things are not going well. We are bleeding as a country in many ways. But also, when you bring any critique to the current state of affairs, some people take it personally, and they tell you that if you don't like it, well, nobody's keeping you here. So we installed this in different buildings around Bucharest, helped with the support of few friends. But also we were granted permission to hang it at the House of People, where the power is located, so to say. It's also the entrance of, in the left, it's also the entrance of the MNAC, the National Museum of Contemporary Art. And in the other building, it's the Menacea Nexa, where different contemporary art spaces were hosted, including the well-known Salonul de Proiecte. So in very short story, once the Menacea changed directors, they also had the Salon de Proiecte had to leave. So they have to reinvent themselves. So a few years later, in the same year as the centenary of Romanian unification, we were invited by the Forum Apulum in Alba Iulia to make a workshop. So we make use of this work and we recycle it in order to measure our nationalism. That was the main idea of the workshop. There was also different other games like Baba Warba, this, I don't know, blind old lady. I don't know how you can translate it. And also contest of running while being bounded with the national flag. But we really love this one because you can see here in the right, it was basically an international team who won. And for us, it was like, it really meant something because this citadel, it's now, I mean, it was the place where the first unification agreements were signed. But in the meantime, it became a very heavy nationalistic. It has a very heavy nationalistic connotation. So for us, it was a big deal to do this there, you know, and somehow they took the place. Also, talking about the context, we are here in Târgu Mureș, where basically the Târgu Mureș, it's almost two same size community, Romanians and Hungarians. So we were struck by the way things can be so well delimited between the Hungarians and the Romanians, with few exceptions. So the city has those parallel narratives, and when we arrived, we tried to look for Hungarian language lessons, and we tried to learn this language, but it was impossible because no one teach you Hungarian. So this work was created for the exhibition Culori Locale at B5 Studio, and we were the only Romanian artists invited, so we were like the minority there. And our gesture was somehow total acceptance, not only regarding language but also regarding culture. But in the same time, it was this gesture was put into question because of the glass and the fact that nobody could tear out the phone number. But the glass was basically for us only an invisible barrier that it exists between these two communities, and because otherwise anybody can copy the number or can just. It's a minimum effort, and basically in the day of the opening they already called us. So this work later was translated in a series of workshops with the same name, Hungarian and Romanian lessons, in Remete, a small village from the Secedi land, where we found a very supportive community. So the strategy was because nobody speaks the other's language, was to directly dive into each one's culture by doing things together. So we had different workshops that treated body, linguistic, also technology, blackout poetry, everything in a very friendly approach, because it was also opposed to the official narrative and certain pressure toward the Hungarian minority that have to learn Romanian because they live in Romania. Otherwise, nobody keeps them here also. So, as a conclusion, in our works, we are interested mostly in to observe the reality and to work with it. Sometimes we pick some extremes and then bend them to themselves, so further they can create, hopefully, a productive conflict, and also to open a dialogue. Once we became parents, a lot of things change. I mean, we still want to have a cynical in the philosophical meaning, view towards the world, but in the same time we realize that we have to put something back, to create and convey new meanings, to offer platforms, and somehow rebuild things on top of what we deconstruct. So here is the art camp, basically, which is somehow a territory that we try to maintain as free of form as possible. And this art camp has almost 5 years. I mean, it was the 5th year last year. And in a few words, we pick a place in Mureș County. This is how we organize it. And we try to bring some mix of Romanian and Hungarian children together. The workshops are held by artists that we love and admire, with focus on contemporary practice that may resonate with the teenagers. Most of the artists never worked before with kids, so it's great because it gives them the opportunity to practice something similar to a blind pedagogy. And in this type of pedagogy, if you lack methods of experience, you always compensate by genuine respect and affection toward the students. So everything is in the frame of a collective development, opposed to this individualistic approach. And our friend Cristian Toroc calls this the creation of affective fictions in the camps, as opposed to educational catering regime, which means basically a well-calculated mediocrity delivered on time, in the term of Pascal Gillen in his book Teaching Art in the Neoliberal Realm. There is a great article by Christian about the art camp in the last Idea magazine, where he put all these things in the broader Eastern European context. There is also a very touchy and beautiful article by Lianca Luca from the point of view of a participant in the camp. And we also have an interview where we had this occasion to share more talks. So this is it. That will be all for now, but maybe I was too fast. But
Thank you.
That was indeed a fast overview, but thanks to that, we were on time with everything. So I'm quite impressed by everyone's discipline to stick to their time slots. Thank you for that. As you can see, there are 4 very different practices here, and 4 very different takes on our being with our surroundings, but also with nature and with each other. We have those positions from very contemplative, of Mihaela with her paintings, observing nature and playing with our senses and our perception through those observation of absurd in reality by Flaviu, to a very sophisticated understanding of what this post-humanist condition mean right now, through those considerations of community and togetherness on this basic level of one person with another within those growing political agendas of such as nationalisms. So I thought that in order to bring us together to the common point of departure, we could start the questions by me asking you about this notion of how to be together, the notion of togetherness for your practice, or maybe for what you do in your everyday life, and what are priorities there? How can we improve? Can we learn from this time that we're in? And do you think that your practice will further explore those notions? I have Gabriel on my screen, but I'm just also thinking that I could give you a bit of a break after this presentation. Mihaela, would you like to start, as you were the first one to present?
Yes. The first thing that comes to my mind when I think about this question is symbiosis. And here I speak of a particular kind of symbiosis, that it's between us humans and the environment that surrounds us. And by environment, I mean this planet, which is a living system, and sometimes we tend to forget in our busy lives. But also another thing that I have in mind is this photograph, this famous photograph called Earthrise. That was actually the first photograph with Earth saw from space, which was taken in 1968, I guess, by an astronaut. So I think this image kind of was the start of the environment movement. So it kind of showed us for the first time, basically, that we are all together on the same planet without borders or anything. So basically, these two things are, for me, like a departure point for this question. But yeah, and I think that this symbiosis idea and the so-called overview effect that kind of astronauts develop after their journey in space are going to be departure points for me, from where I can develop a more or a better outline answer.
Interesting. I thought that I will not keep this structure of the order of the presentations, because I think that what you tackled on is technology here, and I just wonder if Nona, if you could comment in that context, because in your practice this human presence and technology is quite present in terms of our relationship to the so-called inanimate matter.
Yeah, so I thought about this question, and my way of answering it would be to try to relate to other beings or things, to the other, and to find hidden compatibilities, creating associations, blurring the differences between the things, and almost, as Mihaela said, symbiosis and finding a common ground. The first thing that comes to my mind is almost like a Venn diagram, and to focus on the middle of it, like the intersection of things, find that spot. And I think also by exercising a less anthropocentric view of the world and dissolving hierarchies between man and nature, I think that would also help to be together. For example, in the past year, I think we learned that a virus, a nano-organism, has the power to change an entire planet by shifting our realities. And yeah, so I think that's an important lesson to be learned, and not to underestimate the whole ecology around us. Yeah.
You mentioned intersection, and Flaviu, there is a work of yours which tackles on this issue with it's a much lighter touch type of comment, but it's called Self-Portrait as a Tree, and you're just standing there on a tree trunk, and it's very literal but very, very powerful in us, as in how simple it is to become one with our surroundings. So I just wonder if you could speak about this notion of togetherness, but also the power of those small, absurd gestures that you're performing and exercising to really undermine the usual order of things.
Yeah, so I would like to actually connect to also to what Mihaela and Nona was saying, and also, first of all, to the technological aspect, also of our togetherness. So I will start by just making kind of a bold statement, which goes like this: our world is flat. And by this, I don't mean anything relating to conspiracy theories, but rather the way that we interact with the world nowadays through the presence of screens in our lives. So I think that's also one interesting aspect to, let's say, think about, when we think about this, how to be together. And I think it's so much embedded in our current times that, somehow because of all the screens surrounding us, we become more distant to each other in a real way. At the same time, it's a paradox because we are much more connected to each other through the use of screens and through the use of technology. So that was kind of just a side note to the technology aspect. And now I will go to this work that you mentioned. I can share a picture of it just to make it more clear. This is kind of because it's a series of it's like this work develops in a series of photographs, and there's a simple action that I'm doing. I step on a cut down tree on the tree stump, and then I take a portrait of myself. And this was actually the starting point for this kind of series and the way I intervene in my environment. It's actually back from 2013, this one, but then again, it's a recurring topic in my practice and ongoing action that I'm doing. So that was really starting literally from, again, my interaction with the outside world. One day I went out of the house where I was living in, and I saw that they actually cut down the tree, and in a way I started this series, first of all, as a, because I was seeing this tree daily, and it was like such a strong presence in my everyday life, coming and going away from the house. I wanted to kind of mark it, down in my memories. And that was, like just this very literal, simple aspect of doing it as an action. But then, of course, like during the times, or like as it's an ongoing kind of process, I developed a bit more, let's say, theories and ideas relating to this self-portrait as a tree, But then as well, that was kind of a starting point also for my practice where I intervene in my surrounding world. And it also relates in a way to photography because I was really, let's say, not so interested in the documentary aspect of photography or this kind of, a more commercial side of photography. But I was just in a way looking for a way to use photography in a more intuitive way. And I, like me being, let's say, a photographer, I felt it's much more interesting to shift the camera not to the world, but actually also to yourself. And then as a photographer, you also intervene directly through this kind of actions and so on. So it's also relating to, let's say, to the field of photography. But then also starting from the self-portrait as trees, I developed like a different series in which I relate to the environment in a direct way and which I, let's say, document through photography and so on. And just, let's say, coming back to your question, because, it's how to be together. And you already mentioned this in the presentation on Wednesday and even earlier, that you're still thinking to put a question mark or not to this. I think that's really interesting for me also from the aspect of language. If we make it a question or if we make it a statement, first of all, and also relating to this and going through, let's say, my method of working with language, I would, first of all, split this into a question, which is how to be. And then I would also question what together means for us, like on which level we should think about together. Is it on a personal level, like together with ourselves, or is it more like together with someone else, or is it like together with us as a society? That's also like, let's say, a question for the future. So that's, in a way, my visions at the moment on this question and on this topic, but it's as well like something that's relating to an ongoing process, and it's going to develop further in our conversations in the future and also in relation to the Biennale.
Thank you, Flaviu.
Yes. Sorry, Georgia.
I was just about to pass the word to Diana, so please be my guest.
So I wanted to perhaps continue with a question for MONOTREMU. Since you are so close to pupils, students, young artists, I was wondering whether you can see like a shift in this, let's say, ecological conscience in them, or this personal awareness towards the other, changes in the way they think, their position in the world and in regards to nature. Because I think that so many things have changed lately that some effects will be visible on the younger generations who can perhaps, I don't know, not make the mistakes that our generation made, or the older generations. Are you optimistic about that? Can you see this kind of thinking shift, or not necessarily?
We do believe that they are more aware of their environment than us, like a previous generation, and we did see that they are more. They pay more attention to the other. They are willing to accept the differences. They are not, so to say, they are not very. The sarcasm is not something that belongs to them. So yeah. The problem is that how they can obtain the tools to change something, and how
and how to have a voice from themselves. That's why we are making a lot of projects with them, because they have a lot of things to say about the world, and like that they can express their sensitivity and everything. And
if they are allowed, they pay a lot of attention. If we don't occupy their time with nonsenses, they are willing to invest their energy to do something good and to change things for better. Yes.
Yeah, and they are really empathic in a way that I don't know, I really like them, because it's like not investing their time in contest, and developing themselves, and they are willing to take part in collective projects, questioning also this contest from the school, and they are like more willing to have I don't know, collective experience and make some skill performing stuff or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's very important to see these changes and also to influence them. And I think you are a very important part of this process, since you try to develop not necessarily only their skills in terms of visual arts, but so many other ramifications. That have to do with how they position themselves and how they think about the society they live in and so on. So yeah, thank you. Then I will turn next to Flaviu, again with a question regarding how your artistic process has changed during this last year, because I know that your work is so much related to everything that has to do with the everyday life and the activities that you have. So somehow once you have more activities, more meetings, more things that you do during a day, the more, let's say, inspiration you get for your works, although it's not a term that I would normally use, but just to relate to the fact that in a way the everyday life infuses your work, informs your work. And I was thinking, how did you look for the things to use in your artistic practice during a time where somehow all our lives became more monotonous, more predictable, more boring, I would say.
Okay, so luckily, I would say that my life is quite dynamic still. So that's one good thing, or one good aspect, even in this kind of strange times. Like what affected me the most is this idea and this thing of traveling, because I was used to traveling a bit more and kind of being on this constant flux. But yeah, that's like one strong impact that had to do in the past year at least. And that also in a way influences what I'm doing. At the same time, I don't think so much about this restrictions and in a way like this problematic times. I also try not to reference it so much in my works, or I don't, don't do it in a very conscious way if it happens. But at the same time, I think, there was some new opportunities coming out of also these projects that I was presenting you. I had the chance to exhibit in a bit more, let's say, different kind of context, like outside of the gallery space, or outside of the artist-run space, or outside of this kind of very conventional situation. And I think that was also what was really interesting to me. It was that it pushed my process further to think, outside of the space itself, and to take into consideration maybe also more like the public space, or again, like different materials, and as well on how to relate to my work, maybe through using more instructions, or again, like using external help to produce some of my ideas and to make them into physical works. Yeah.
But did you rethink, in a way, some of the mediums that you use because of the fact that, to quote you, our world is so flat right now? Because you used to also make, I don't know, artist books or different other things, but now since everything happens on a screen, did you think of transferring somehow the things you do on this flat world?
Well, I think, again, I was anyway before, let's say, affected by this flat world. So it was already before coming into this 2020 very special year. I was already, because I was in this kind of constant traveling flux, I was already spending so much time on my phone, for example, in a way to communicate to people. So I was already used to that, or it wasn't like something new, to me. At the same time, maybe it just became much more present, but it's something personally I prefer, like the more direct interaction with humans and also with the environment, which at some level, I'm lacking at the moment, let's say. And at the same time, you mentioned this kind of publications or doing like artist books and so on. That's still an ongoing, but it always was a side thing of what I'm doing. In a way, already maybe since 9 years ago, or this time I was like doing this kind of publications, or working with this medium of publication one way or another. So this didn't really change, or didn't affect my practice in relation to what started happening since last year to us. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Flaviu. I would turn back to Mihaela now, and I would like to comment on something that I noticed since the last time I made a studio visit when I was still in Cluj. It's been a while already, and I noticed that something has dramatically changed in your practice. The fact that even if you use the canvas and you use painting, even though you call it drawing, you gave up the stretcher of the canvas, so that the canvas also becomes takes up a completely different status, materiality, and so on. Am I right? Because I remember that you used to do more, let's say, to use more conventional surfaces, whereas now I believe that the fact that the canvas becomes something else, it turns into almost paper, as you showed us, or banners, or different other forms and shapes. This is also a big change in your practice, and I think that you also have a more plural approach towards all the instruments that you are using. As you said, you are also trying to stretch the medium of drawing, but I guess you are also stretching the materiality on which you are expressing yourself.
Yes, that it's true. I was still exploring at the moment back then when you were visiting me at the studio. So at that point, I was more at the beginning of my, let's say, writing this personal alphabet of mine. So I was used to draw a lot in these notebooks that are actually like these black sketchbooks. But for me, these were the essential or focus in what I did. So to create this sort of stories with drawings in the books. So when I started to take out the drawing, let's say, from these books, I was still trying to find personal ways that I can approach bigger surfaces. So now I kind of found this solution that works for me, and I like to always think about how I can push the ways I can use the materials so they don't look in this traditional way. And I also don't work with frames and so on. So every time I exhibit a work, I try to find a way to do it in a personal perspective, let's say.
Yeah, I see. So we have a question from Facebook. It's not addressed necessarily to one of you. It's a question from the artist Liliana Mercioiu, who is wondering how important is intuition for your artistic activity. I believe that Mihaela already answered us during her presentation, now where you mentioned that intuition is actually at the core of what you're doing. So I would turn to your colleagues to see if there is anybody who would like to answer.
Yeah, I will just give a short, I think I also mentioned in my presentation a bit about this. And in my case, it's always about intuition. So I don't really, like that's a really important aspect of what I'm doing. But it's also something I feel you can't really theorize much, or, it doesn't need so much, explanation or anything like that. So I would subscribe really a lot to the idea of intuition, and I really believe in that sense.
Thank you, Flaviu. Nona, perhaps you would like to answer this, perhaps related more to how you do your research. And although I think that in your case, you are very precise when you are looking for something, I also think that the fact that the area where you find, for example, these concretions are not always what you expect. Now you started from a research in Romania, but in the end, it's such a universal thing, and it's such a mystery for humanity that is not so much related to one particular region or context. How do you deal with this idea of, let's say, intuition versus planning a research? And yeah,
I think for me, most important thing are the encounters, like literally encountering things that trigger my interests. So it's not so much an intuitive process. Sometimes it's very scripted in a way, but I think intuition starts when I'm starting the project, and then I have a more intuitive approach towards the medium. How can that be shown? How can I express that? And then, I'm also not a very technical person, so I guess I have to use my intuition sometimes to find solutions and to try to make things real. So I think it's more, I have an intention and then intuition follows on. Yeah.
Thank you. Is Kasia back with us? Kasia, can you hear us?
I am tentatively. Let's see for how long. And I'm really sorry that I will have to watch this as a recording, which is kind of absurd if we think about being together in one place or in one time. Now you froze again.
So we were talking about the question that artist Liliana Mercioiu posted on Facebook. Okay, we have some technical issues which are inevitable, I think, using Zoom and not being in the same place at the same time. But we can work with that as well, desynchronizations and delays. I think we are all used to that. So then I would invite Laura and Gabi to perhaps elaborate a bit on the question that Lili Mercioiu posed.
Okay.
Yes, if we are thinking on intuition about being opposed to methodologies, as I speaking from my point of view, like I'm a teacher, I think it's, yes, we are using intuition a lot. Yeah, in what we are doing.
For us, it's like a core activity but what we did observe is that the more you know, as pure knowledge, the more you can use this intuition. The more you can navigate through things and not doing like not to have like fixed frames of working, just going, I don't know, with the flow, so to say. So yeah, it's very important, and it's a core activity in our work.
Yes, thank you so much. I think that we all need this ingredient in everything we do. So, and thank you, Lili, for your question. Then I think that for today, we are happy with what we heard. We are looking forward to hear more, and I'm sure that these meetings will continue in the following months. Thank you, first of all, the artists who were here with us today, Mihaela Hudrea, Flaviu Cacoveanu, Nona Inescu, and the duo MONOTREMU. They will be part of Kasia Regi's exhibition for the Biennial Art Encounters 2021, which will take place this autumn. And I would like to pass on the word to my colleague Georgia Baczynski for the wrap-up. This is the final day of public presentations of the project Zoom In on Romanian Artists. But we will have another surprise tomorrow, the website, which is of course in the making, but at least it will become soon a very good tool for everybody who wants to follow us and to see more information on the biennial. And we thank Kasia Regic also, who now has some technical issues and she cannot say goodbye to all of you, but I will say goodbye and thank you from her side as well. So Georgia, I pass on the word to you. Thank you everybody again.
Thank you, Diana. And I was just laughing about this huge surprise we have for the public, which is the website. And it got me thinking about what surprises have become in this online world we are all experiencing since already a year now, I think. So anyway, yes, the big surprise for tomorrow is the launching of the website of the biennial and also the website dedicated to this project, which is part of the biennial. On this note, I would like to thank everybody on behalf of the entire team of the Art Encounters Foundation for accepting the invitation of taking part in this project. We thought of this project as a soft launch, so to say, of the 4th edition of the Art Encounters Biennial with a focus on the Romanian art scene and on the Romanian artists, which the curators have selected for their exhibitions. This week we heard both Kasia and Mihaela presenting their curatorial concept, and they have invited 9 Romanian artists to speak about their artistic practice. And I have to say we really enjoyed all the presentations and seeing everybody together, even though on a screen and not in person as we used to. And we would also like to thank the Ministry of Culture, which has made this project possible, and our long-term partners, which are the Contrasens Cultural Association, Plan B Gallery, Cluj Cultural Center, and the Art and Design Faculty in Timișoara. I will remind the public that tomorrow we will launch officially the website of the biennial, which is entitled The Other Us, and also the website dedicated to this project as part of the biennial, and recordings of each presentation from this week will be available on the website. And on this note, we hope for a safe and physical encounter as soon as possible. Stay safe and keep an eye on our Instagram and Facebook pages and on our website for the latest updates of the biennial.